Hey everybody, and welcome back. Welcome to this month's edition of Black, Female, and 50 Plus, the Power Trifecta. I'm your host, former corporate CEO turned career strategist, Janice Sutherland. And before I start, if you've ever wondered what a career strategist is, I'm the woman you need in your corner to not only help you uncover and rediscover the career you want, but also to guide you and strategize with you regarding how to obtain it. Especially when we get to our mid-careers that we've invested so much to get to this point where we are, that the most difficult thing to do is to know how to get to your next chapter. So as I said, thank you for joining us today. And over the past few months, this is the 5th edition of Black, Female, and 50 Plus. And we have discussed a number of topics. So what it's like to be a Black woman over 50 in society and the world of work, how to dress in your 50s, strengthen your mental wellness as a mid-career Black woman, and how organizations can support. And last month, we all talked about staying recruitable when you're over 50. But this month, we're tackling a topic that there's not one Black woman I know who hasn't experienced it. Those seemingly innocuous comments, actions. No, where are you really from? Oh, you speak so well. When did you qualify, or where did you qualify? No need to be so angry. Oh, I can't pronounce your name. Is it okay if I just call you? Or we can't let you go on that program right now. There's far too much to do when your white colleague is away studying from the office every single week. Now, I know you recognize that list, and I'm more than certain that you can add your own. And just to bring that back to full day, I am just back off a trip from the UK. And I suppose I was in my little safety cocoon living where I live right now. But the all too telling signs popped up for me whilst I was there. Being followed by the security guard in the supermarket. And there was an instance when I tried to purchase something at an exhibition that I paid to attend. And as I stood waiting to be acknowledged by the woman whose stall it was, she literally looked through me. Now, you may think, well, looked through you, but we know that look. We know what it looks like. She addressed everyone else. She addressed the people that were behind me. And as I stood there, those feelings, those familiar feelings came rushing back. And I thought, why am I even contemplating giving this woman my money when someone who doesn't acknowledge my existence? And with the transition back to the office, working back in place, organizations are encouraging women to come back to the office. But for some Black women, for some of us, they're feeling the stress of returning to a space that never felt safe for them. And we're going to talk about microaggressions today. And I have someone who's a bit more versed in microaggressions and how we look to navigate them and minimize the impact of our career. So let me introduce to you this month's guest, Rebecca Hemmings. She's the founder and director of Strawberry Words Training and Development Company. Actually based in my home city. We've never met before till quite recently, Birmingham, UK. And Strawberry Words is dedicated to enhancing human relationships and improving the lives of culturally marginalized people. And Rebecca has over 20 years experience in delivering training in cultural psychology, anti-racism, and community engagement. That was a lot, Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining me today. And for the audience, I just want to say this isn't a one-way thing. I want you to participate. I'm actually going to pop up some questions on screen for you to kind of give your feedback as well at the same time. So, Rebecca, tell us why the interest for you in microaggressions.
I think it's very similar for most. I'll start by saying ethnic minorities, then I'll say women, then I'll say Black people, then I'll say Black women. Especially as a Black woman, to be very honest. Just because, and I said this yesterday when I was promoting this, like before I found out what microaggressions were, living in the UK, even though I was born here, it felt like being in a strange land. Certain things would happen. People would speak to me in certain ways, and I'd just be confused as to why is that happening? Why are they speaking to me in that way? Why am I responding in the way that I'm responding? What is this thing? So once I discovered what microaggressions were, they just opened up a whole new world. It was like, oh my gosh, finally I'm getting answers. It makes sense. And for me, I feel like I've got the gift. I have a gift now in being able to teach people about these, because through teaching people, the treatment will, my hope is, will eventually get better.
We can but hope. So for those who are listening and probably not quite sure what a microaggression is, can you give us a description?
Yeah, the simplest way to put these, because there's many different descriptions, it's an insult or an invalidation that's usually unintentional, but not always, that communicates to ethnic minorities that you are unwelcome, incapable of performing well, invisible, and untrustworthy. And I think those are the bits to hang on to, that because we receive what they communicate. We receive not being seen, as you said in your introduction. We receive being seen as not being capable, or not being worthy of being trusted. That's what we feel. That's what we see. And so they're very damaging. I do wish, however, they weren't called microaggressions. It was Chester M. Pierce, who was from Harvard University in the 70s. He created the term. And I don't know if a lot of people know, but originally the term was purely to describe insults against Black people. But as time went on, it is now used for all marginalized groups of people. So when I'm talking about race and microaggressions, I'll be specific about racial microaggressions, but of course, as a woman, as a member of another marginalized group, you can face them also.
And adding being over 50 as well.
Yes.
That's, so there are lots of different things, little things that kind of crop up sometimes, that we kind of, I suppose, we take on the chin, so to speak. But so I think you kind of answered the question a little bit, Rebecca, but are all microaggressions the same?
No, definitely not. There are three main types. You've got your micro assaults, and that's intentional. So this is where it's a microaggression that happens in a private setting, but it's very intentional. So this looks like somebody saying to, let's say a manager saying to a Black woman, well, I know you only got the job because, of your race. But it's because it's in a private setting that makes it a microaggression. Otherwise, it will be your typical overt form of racism. Then you got micro insults. This is when you demean, or when a person's history or culture is demeaned. So saying something like, oh, you speak very good English. I often hear that from, many people, from West Africans to wherever. So again, because what does that really say? It's really saying that, well, if you don't speak good English, you're not very of great value. And also, what's it saying about all the people in the community that don't speak like that, but also you're a representative of that community? It's just an insult all the way through. Or the one that I always get is, oh, you're very eloquent. You're very eloquent, and you speak very well. And I always come back with, well, why wouldn't I be eloquent? And then you have your micro invalidation. So micro invalidations is basically when your experiences are dismissed. So these are so common, and again, you'll know all of them. Oh, I don't see skin color. Oh, you're using the race card. All of those, and so they dismiss the experiences, and it's essentially they're a form of gaslighting, because they're saying, no, what you're saying is not real, and we just want to stop talking about it. So just shush and let's talk about nicer things.
Let's just put it to a side. Now, the reason this was I picked this as a topic for this month was I run regular roundtables, women of color roundtables, in leadership roundtables, and one of the things we talked about was microaggressions. And I kept thinking, I cannot believe this ish is still going on. And these were younger women to me, maybe 20 years difference. I'm in my 50s now. And I'm thinking, I dealt with this so many years ago. I can't believe it's still going. However, my question here was, how has society, do you think, conditioned baby boomers, I'm on the cusp of baby boomer, or Gen X women to react to microaggressions, do you think?
I think that there's a difference. I think with Gen X, Gen X would be my generation, right? So I think and again, I'm generalizing, everybody's different. But I think the difference is we kind of grew up realizing that they happen, but kind of pushing through anyway, kind of brushing them to the side. Whereas I think baby boomers, they've kind of had enough. And it's kind of like, look, I've been through this ish, as you say, so many times. Take me for who I am, or I'm out of here. I've seen so many women who have that sort of attitude now. And I can understand, because if you've had years and years and years of it, there comes a point when you think, well, I've just had enough.
They're going to that situation where I met when I was back in Birmingham, and I was like, wow, I live in a country where, you know, I've probably been cocooned a little bit because I don't have to deal with that per se. But I'm not going to lie, I wanted to go all the way back. It was everything I could do not to say that I'm not, you know, who are you? You know, and quite rightly. But I also think back in the day, speaking from my age, we were told to respect, or the way you're going to get ahead is by towing the line, or even using the phrase play the white man type of thing. And, you know, just accept that's how it is. But I think now, definitely from my career perspective, I'm not going to take that anymore. I'm not going to take that anymore. I think that's definitely where I am right now. Audience, if you have any questions, feel free to drop questions in the chat. We want to hear your point of view from us talking about it. But I really want to hear, you know, what microaggressions have you experienced? Has your attitude towards them changed as you've aged? And even how have microaggressions, your experience of microaggressions, impacted your career? So drop your questions in the chat, because, you know, we want to answer them. We want to be upfront about it. Sorry, Becky, you were going to say something.
Oh gosh, you asked me now. It was just about the fact that since 2020, obviously since what happened, you know, the murder of George Floyd, obviously there have been a lot more conversations in the workplace around race. So the great thing I'm seeing now is that people have just kind of had enough. Black people, Black women have had enough, and they're speaking up. They're speaking about their experiences, and so I am noticing a shift. There's a lot more bravery in tackling the topic, and what I always find really rewarding actually is when I'm teaching about microaggressions within organizations, is that, you know, we all know what microaggressions are, even if we hadn't heard the word, we felt them. But just by really understanding what they are, the different types, how they cause harm, how you can challenge them, and so on, it empowers people. And just the fact that they're having these conversations in the presence of their white colleagues, they're being validated, they're being seen. And that's the feedback I often get, is, finally, we're talking about this. We need to talk about it more, because far too often problems have just been swept under the carpet.
I totally agree with you there. And I suppose that's progress. I guess that's progress. So looking back, so coming back to us as women, and the mid-career woman, how do microaggressions impact our careers?
Oh, well, let's go with the personal first. I mean, there's so many different ways in which it impacts us. It can lead to, as you know, stress. Stress is you're thinking, should I have dealt with that? Should I have said something? But if I say something, so-and-so might think I'm racist, and then that might ruin the relationship. And if that ruins the relationship, you know, they might go and tell somebody else, and then I'll have, you know, a really uncomfortable working environment. But if I don't say something, I'm letting myself down. So you kind of constantly got this mind chatter, this intrusive cognition. And then, you know, that leads to, you feeling as though, wondering also, was that comment made because of me being a woman, or was it made because I'm Black, or was that person just a horrible person anyway? Like attributional bias. I'm remembering the phrase. Is it because of that? I'm not sure. Then that can lead to a lack of desire to show up as who you are. We all know about code switching, assimilation. We change who we are in order to fit in to the environments. And it's almost, certainly with code switching, it's a form of, it's a survival mechanism. If you're able to go into a workplace and not code switch as a Black woman, you are very blessed. And it's usually a rare group of people that can do that completely. Usually they're artists who can be creative and kind of just say F the the world. But most people have to conform in some way, shape or form to get by. And then, yes, obviously it can lead to racial weathering, where you then physically take on the impact of having to deal with this racial trauma, because it is a form of trauma which we're constantly exposed to, and that's made worse because we don't they're not openly spoken about, so they just keep happening because people can pretend that damage isn't being done. So in terms of people's careers, what that also means is that as you lose that confidence because these happen to you time and time again, you might not go for a particular position. You might not think you're worthy. You really might embody that imposter syndrome. Also, from the top, if people are, directing microaggressions at you, if they deem you as incapable, unworthy, not intelligent enough, you just might not be seen as worthy enough to be offered a particular role or to be offered a raise or whatever it might be. So there's many different ways, unfortunately, in which it can and does affect Black women.
And I'm glad you said there imposter syndrome, because it's not always imposter syndrome. It's more the sense of belonging. Because we kind of know that, look, this isn't feel right. The spidey sense of tingling, and we're not being welcomed here. You're saying one thing, but the vibes and what I'm seeing are totally different, because it's not always verbalized either. It can be the action. It can be the actions that are taken.
Or inaction. Inaction is massive.
Absolutely. You're not ready for that yet. But hang on a minute, I'm the most qualified person here, I've been doing it longer, blah blah blah. Or what I've seen in some situations where persons have brought in younger, maybe white males to do the jobs because you're not ready yet, but I'm the one that's got to teach the people. How does that work?
And there's all sorts of unconscious biases in play as well. There's the halo effect, where someone who might have a degree from Oxford or might be that white male just might be seen as the ideal person for that particular role. And you've got the horn effect, unfortunately, being projected onto you, and you're just seen as not a worthy candidate. So there's a lot at play.
Definitely. So how, I talked about going all the way back when I experienced that microaggression. So, but that's, in the workplace, you can't do that. So how should we react? How should we navigate them when they happen to us?
Well, the advice is from studies is that where possible, you want to educate people around them, about them even, because when you educate somebody about them, number one, you disarm them so they stop attacking you because you want to be stopped from being attacked. But then you educate them so that they're far less likely to do it again. And I'll give you an example of this. I mean, there's different ways in which you can do that. They're called micro challenges. So you can be confrontational. You can say, what did you mean when you said X? And really just, say what it is. Or, the typical being a Black person in a lift and the white person's cowering in the corner. I'm not going to attack you just because I'm Black. I'm not going to attack. You could be that upfront about it, but not everybody has that sort of confidence or has that emotional energy to do that. And so one of the ways in which I found really, really useful, but quite simple, is to make simple utterances. So I'll give you an example of this. I was at the airport recently with my daughter, and I bought tickets to go in the fast track queue, but that was actually taking longer than the other queue. And so the security guard looked at the group of white guys behind me and said, "Oh, do you guys want to come over?" And I said, "Wow." Everything just stopped in that moment. And all of a sudden, "Oh, no, I didn't see you there. Come over, ma'am." All of a sudden he's scanning my passport and I'm all the way through. So what that does is it stops the action. It lets that person know that something wasn't cool. There's also an audience. They're listening. Oh, would that have been racist? He wants to fix that quick time. So, just by saying that one word in that way it was a way of challenging it. Made a difference.
Thanks for that. We just had a comment pop up. Let me have a quick look at the comment that we got popped up. So what was it? So I actually had a conversation with a co-worker, re-comment, "Don't see skin stroke color." She's now close to being an ally and understands more because we're open to share, and she was open to listen, understand. That's education, as you said.
Oh, absolutely. So she had the conversation about don't see. Yeah, I think that's really important because it's one of the most common micro invalidations. You know, I always say that, you know, this is my little analogy with I don't see color. And people tend to get it when I say this. Like, you know, when I wake up in the morning, I don't look at myself and think, I'm looking very black this morning. You know, I don't brush my teeth and think, yeah, I'm still black. You know, it's only when I turn on the TV, go in the shop, and I'm followed around, you know, turn on the TV and see the latest racist incident, being followed around the shop. I'm in the workplace. Oh, can I touch your hair? You know, all that sort of stuff. I'm reminded I'm black. So being black is very much a part of my identity, not because I make it that way, but because society does. So when someone says, I don't see your race, I don't see your skin color, what they're really saying is, I want you to shut down that whole part of you because it makes me as a white person feel really uncomfortable. It's called white centering. So when somebody understands that, they get that they are actually saying to someone, don't be authentic, you don't belong. So and most people, you know, to be fair, don't want to cause harm, don't want to offend, don't want to hurt someone's feelings. So when they understand that concept, it just makes it a little bit easier to part ways with such a common way of thinking.
But, you know, and a question's popped up for me, and it wasn't our questions we talked about, but why is it our responsibility to educate these people?
Unfortunately, because nobody else is talking about them. Nobody else, you know, nobody else has the energy to want to end them. No one's motivated like we are. I mean, well, in an ideal world, we want allies to be able to also jump into conversations and say, I say this, you know, when a microaggression happens and there's an ally in the vicinity, the least they can do is to acknowledge the fact that it happens. Let's say you're in a meeting, you're being spoken over, and let's say the ally didn't have the confidence to say, well, that wasn't cool, you weren't letting her speak. So if that doesn't happen, what they at least want to do is say, hey, Rebecca, I saw what was going on in the meeting. That wasn't cool. Because all of a sudden, wow, I'm seen. You saw what happened. I'm not going crazy. It's really going on. You're validated. You know?
And it is that thing because no, they didn't mean it like that. And it's like, you know, now you're invalidating how I feel when I know I felt it, and it's not the first time I felt it. You know, so let me see. I've got another comment just popped in. Let me look at this. I have found during my experience in multilateral and corporate spaces, there is an undertone of expectation regarding a Black woman's look. How should your hair look? How you should dress? How much makeup is appropriate? While living in the UK, I've also had multiple people over the years ask to touch my hair when they're really saying it looks way too different than it should from my white peers. Were the moments that I knew it was not the environment. Those are the moments I knew it was not the environment for me. Absolutely. The
touching of hair.
I mean, the touch of hair. I mean, we have lived through it. I'm like, I'm 57 years old, and like, and is your hair really yours?
Who the
hell do you think it is?
I think that's what, you know, unfortunately, going back to your question around why should it be our job to educate? Unfortunately, it is, because if in those moments you don't say something, you're going to feel really bad that, you know, you didn't say something. And if it goes to happen again, it will just play on your mind. So unfortunately, in order to get through this, we have to educate them. And I think things have progressed. I know it still happens, but I feel as though it's not happening as much. People still ask the questions, but they're going to touch thing. I think that is calming down somewhat because people are being more open. There's a lot of information on the internet about Black women's hair and the shoulds and the shouldn'ts, but we still have a long way to go.
Yeah, definitely. So the question I got for you, Rebecca, is how do we keep ourselves safe in this environment?
Well,
as opposed to challenging is how we keep ourselves safe.
Yeah, it's really important to have a support network, and I know not every single person is going to have that, but if you have people that you can speak to, whether it's your white allies or whether it's your bona fide girlfriends, then do that, because it releases that tension, that stress, that trauma. We all need an outlet. Get a journal, write in the journal. Because I talk about race all the time, I see a therapist every single week. So if anything comes up in the sessions, bam, I'm dealing with it. Look, I've had cancer. I'm not trying to go there again. So I make sure that there is an outlet for that. This work is important to me, but at the same time, I have to stay healthy. So the really important thing is that you find a way to deal with whatever is that's on your mind, because what makes people sick is holding it in, getting angrier and angrier, not letting that frustration out.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And one of the things I find crop up with my clients is that sometimes it's all of a sudden that one of the things they relate to me is that you understand, you can relate. You're not going to diminish how I felt in that moment.
Yeah.
And I feel safe having that conversation with you, because I'm not going to say, oh, you're just brushing it off. I'm going to say, whether I believe it or not, there's a chance it's more true than not, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So they feel a lot safer sharing those experiences. And I've created This Woman Can community, and I find a lot of women are now sharing those experiences they've had at work that they've never been able, especially, I know for many years I was the only white face in the room. I'm sorry, only black face in the room, so there was no outlets, or there was no, I was a black leader. And even as black leaders, and as you sort of like George Floyd and stuff like that over the past few years, what I saw was the environment had thought, well, only leaders come in white, because the articles were, how would you as a white leader deal with the race question in your office? When actually leaders come in black too. So it's a slightly different nuance.
I mean, but even that though, this is why I say that everybody needs this education on microaggressions and just anti-racism and racism in general, because you do, just because we're black doesn't mean that we know everything about racism. Not everyone's done the studying. And my hope is that more black people, black women, educate them more. So because it arms you, you're able to then eloquently communicate your needs, communicate the problems. Sometimes people just don't have the words, and I think that is why I feel so empowered doing this work, is because I'm now able to say exactly what it is, and I'm going to tell you what it is, because actually this has been studied for years, and it's a thing, and a lot of people just don't know how to express themselves, and so it can make it very difficult to make themselves understood.
So just kind of piggybacking on that, Rebecca, what should organizations be aware of when dealing with microaggressions, and how can they create a safer environment for black women?
I had somebody, I was working with a university the other day, and somebody had said to me, they've got a new person coming in, an ethnic minority, and they really want to make sure that this person is supported and they don't face racial microaggressions. But unfortunately, the news I had to share was they're going to face microaggressions. Like, we're just not there yet where it's not going to happen. So I think the first thing is just acknowledging that it always happens. They're daily occurrences, and they're, often people would dismiss microaggressions as, saying, well, we all receive insults, but it's a systemicity of microaggressions that make them so. So first, just that acknowledgement piece. Because if you don't understand, well, number one, know what they are, but number two, acknowledge that they happen on such a regular basis, how you even begin to begin to deal with them. And then it's knowing how to manage difficult conversations around microaggressions when they pop up. People get tongue-tied, people get paralyzed, people do want to shut the door in the conversation because they simply do not have the words. Their racial literacy is not developed. So again, it's about developing that racial literacy, even on a very basic level. Understand what systemic racism is and how that might impact or does impact your black staff, your ethnic minority staff. So it's very much about an education piece initially, and then it's about having the policies to back that up, to make sure that people are held to account when racist behavior happens. I'm yet to find the unicorn that is a racial safeguarding policy. I haven't come across an organization that has that. But if you can have safeguarding policies for sexual harassment and all sorts of things, bullying and so on, why do we not have that for racial harm, given that it's so common? So anyway, I'm not going to talk about it forever, but those are a few things that organizations can start with.
And just to add on to that, you talk about policies and stuff like that. Is this a HR responsibility?
I think it's a responsibility of everyone from the top right down, because I find that there's some people in the HR departments that are really passionate about this work, as they usually are, but then they don't have the support from the top. There isn't the desire or the resources or the finances to change things, or the will. So it has to start from the top and right throughout the organization.
Yeah. So my last question on this, my prepared question, what are the ways, and we touched on allies earlier, but what are the ways that allies can help combat microaggressions, and maybe describe what an ally is? Because, you know, to me, this is almost a woke word. I don't want to say woke, but, you know, but I didn't have allies when I was coming up through.
I mean, in fact, I'll explain 3 words to you. That there's the actor. So there's an actor who basically acts like they're, you know, on your side, but that's performative. So they just basically, that the intent isn't good. They want to make things look as though they're, you know, make it look as though they're anti-racist, but they're not really. They just want to look good. You know, this is when like people put their black squares on social media. That's very much the actor. Then you have your ally. So your ally is a person who is by your side saying, look, I'm going to use my privilege in this context as a white person to use my voice to help you wherever I can. So I'm beside you. Now, I'm not going to put myself too much at risk because, you know, I'm not putting myself in your shoes, but I'm going to help you out where I can. I recognize that I have privilege, so I'm going to do that. And then you have your activist. This is your person who is your ride or die. They're going to go out on the pickets with you. They're going to protest. They're a disruptor. And they're basically saying, your fight is my fight. We're going to tear this place down and we're going to get justice. So I think it's important to understand the context of that, because people will fall into each area at different times. It's not linear. You know, you're not always an ally. Sometimes you might fall back into being an actor, or you might go as far as being that disruptor. So but generally it's using your privilege as an ally to help the cause of anti-racism.
Thank you. That wasn't my last question. I got one more question. So if you had to share one piece of advice for a mid-career mature woman facing microaggressions or navigating this right now, what would that one piece of advice be?
See, I'm all about personal happiness. You know, I really am. And, you know, my honest answer to that is to go where you're celebrated, not tolerated.
Absolutely.
First and foremost. But if you feel as though, you know, you have to remain in that environment, number one, you know, load yourself up, you know, educate yourself as much as possible about this. Try and find out who your allies are, leaning on them, leaning on the people that have influence to try and make change, and definitely make sure you've got a support mechanism, again, whether that's a friend, a journal, or a therapist.
Fabulous. And I think we've got some yeses. Some people are actually accepting. So I didn't have many questions this month, but I know it's a hot topic. I know it's a very hot topic. So if anybody wants to have conversations or follow up with you, Rebecca, you know, from an organizational perspective, you know, you do a lot of work with organizations. How can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, well, certainly link with me on the LinkedIn page. So Rebecca Hemmings, as my name is spelled here, certainly connect with me. As I say, I teach people about microaggressions and anti-racism all the time. So you're very welcome to jump on to one of the online courses also. But yeah, LinkedIn is the first and the best place to find me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today, Rebecca. Really valued your input.
You're very welcome. Thank you, and keep up the great work.
Thank you. So thanks everybody for joining me this week, or this month, should I say, in Black Female 50, the Power Trifecta. We've got more topics coming up. I would love to hear from women in the 50 plus bracket who are maybe working with young children, working with maybe older children. Maybe you're even one of the sandwich generation, you're looking after elderly parents. I'd love to tackle more of those topics, bring to light some of the challenges that Black women 50 plus are facing. So if there's any other topics you suggest you think I should cover off, feel free to contact me again, either via LinkedIn or at my email, info@janicesutherland.com. We've got some more topics coming up. I'm going to be talking about pensions because it's very close to my heart, what you should be looking for, and lots more topics coming up. So I'm going to sign off now. So as I said, if you have any topics you think we should cover, thank you so much for joining me, and just drop them in the comments. So glad to have you here. Take care.